welcome to episode 20 of the Just Run podcast. Reese can't be with us this week due to his moving and all the internet's been shut off, so he's got no signal to do it. This week I'm joined by a woman who I've been following for over 4 years on YouTube and social media. She's instilled my love for trails and ultra marathons over the years. This week we speak to the incredible Flora Beverley. Okay, so welcome, Flora. How's life?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, good. I noticed you're getting back into your running. You're running 2 times a week at the moment?
I'm supposed to be running like 3 times a week, and I've actually just upped my training program to 4 times a week. But life sometimes gets in the way. We've got a big not really refurbishment. Basically, our garage was falling down, so we're rebuilding it, and it means that we've got builders here like constantly. So actually, I feel like I've got several different full-time jobs at the moment, and running, I mean, it is technically part of my job, but trying to fit it all in around everything else is difficult. And I don't even have kids, so I don't know how people with kids manage it.
Oh, it's a nightmare trying to find the time.
Yeah.
Absolute nightmare. Early mornings are a good one, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So how did you actually get into running? And did the running start before YouTube, or did it develop from your YouTube channel?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually, because I think if you look at my social media pages, you'd assume that I've always been a runner or that I've always been sharing running content or whatever. And that's very much not been the case. I've been doing Instagram at least for 13 years or something, and I have certainly not been running for 13 years. I started running consistently in 2019 or thereabouts, when I was asked by a brand, actually, as part of a brand deal, to run Tokyo Marathon, which is obviously an incredible opportunity and not one that I'm going to turn down, despite the fact that I was only given like 10 weeks for all the training from pretty much a base of no running at all. So as you can imagine, despite the fact that I trained as much as I could in that time, the race itself, I'm going to put in inverted commas, didn't go so well. I managed to get IT band syndrome in both of my knees and I sort of hobbled my way to the end. But I guess that was sort of the start of the running journey, the running bug, whatever you want to call it. But it wasn't until I discovered trail running as a way to reduce the impact on my knees that I really started to love running. Up to that point, it was, initially back in my teenage years, it was sort of a way of trying to lose weight. And then it became a way of keeping fit for my boxing. And then it became something that I actually enjoyed for the sake of it. So if you don't enjoy running yet, give it time.
I actually look back today to how far I've been watching your videos for.
Yeah.
And it's been 4 years.
Really? No
yeah,
way.
and I've watched every one in the last 4 years, which I found astounding. And
the support.
The first one I found was I ran my first ultra marathon with UltraX.
Yes, that was an incredible day. And I think is also where a lot of other people found me on YouTube. I did gain a big proportion of my following on YouTube in lockdown, because obviously a lot of people were finding the sports that they could do very restricted for obvious reasons. And running just was something that I was then doing a lot of. I was actually up until lockdown training for a couple of races, road races, a half marathon and a 10K. And then obviously lockdown hit, blah, blah, blah. And I went down to Dorset and I ended up just trail running, just without any goals or time restraints or anything really. And just, yeah, it's a beautiful place to trail run. And then that ultra came along as another opportunity, because my friend worked for UltrarX at the time. And she was like, hey, do you fancy coming and doing this thing? And I was like, yes, any excuse to run different trails that I've been running for 8 months. And it was an incredible experience, and I never really expected to finish. It didn't even cross my mind that was something to aim for. It was kind of just like, yeah, I fancy a jolly out in the Peak District and eating loads of food and getting gorgeous views and seeing lovely people and my friends that I haven't seen in months. So yeah, I'll give it a go. And I think that lack of pressure actually made it such an enjoyable experience.
So was that the only UltrarX event you've done, or have you done more since? I can't remember.
Well, technically UltrarX partnered with Tribe Run for Love for their Croatia, Try Run for Love, I believe. So I did that, but that wasn't necessarily an Ultra X event. They just did the logistics for it because obviously they're used to putting on races. And I think that might be the only one I've done of theirs. I keep intending to do more, but there's only so many ultra marathons that you can run in a year without completely burning out. So yeah, I haven't done as many as I would perhaps like.
Did you have a coach back then for your first ultra? Because I know you had a coach for London Marathon a couple of years ago. Then you turned to ultrarunner app, didn't you?
Yes, so I had a coach of sorts for Tokyo in 2019, mainly because I think it would have been very irresponsible of me to try and run a marathon with zero background in running and do it all in 10 weeks. So that was very useful, and that was provided by the brand. And then for my first ultra, no, I wasn't being coached at that time. I just sort of was out on the trails having a great time, basically.
Just winging it.
Just winging it. Yeah, exactly. I kind of had a structure for my half marathon training. And it turns out when you turn your half marathon training on flat roads to being hilly trails, it actually makes you pretty fit if you can handle
it. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say that I was, ultra marathon fit. There was no way that I could have raced it per se, but I was definitely fit because I had been running trails 4 or 5 times a week for the last however many months and having a good time doing it. And then I turned to the Runner app, which for those of you who don't know is a run coaching app. And I'm an ambassador for them because I first tried it and I loved it so much. I was like, this is definitely the future of run coaching for those who can't or don't want to fork out, 100, 150 quid a month or whatever it costs to get a coach. I think it is really good. It's done by AI, basically. So you tell it your current ability, your current paces, what you're training for, how long you have, etc., whether you want to add strength training, and it creates this program to get you from where you are now to where you want to be. And the great thing, in my opinion, about it, and the reason that I kind of have been doing it like training plans back to back on there, is that you just don't get bored. Like, it is really nice to have that sort of structure. And a coach, obviously, like an in-person coach, definitely offers that. And I think they are invaluable. Having been coached before, for not only Tokyo Marathon, but also getting my sub 20-minute 5K that I did in 2021. I was coached for that. And that is invaluable, but equally it is so expensive. So it's a nice sort of halfway house between getting a basic plan off the internet and forking out 150 quid a month for an in-person coach.
Have you thought about, because I've just thought of this now when you were speaking, a subject for a couple of videos, you could have ChatGPT create a plan for you and see how it works for you.
Yeah, that'd be really, I'm definitely interested in doing all those sorts of things. Having said that, at the moment, I'm kind of like just trying to get back to my running, and definitely don't want to derail myself this early on. But then, as soon as I'm fit, I then don't want to derail being really fit as well. So there never seems like a perfect time to sort of go on some random ChatGPT created plan.
So for a lot of people who don't know you, can you explain why you're getting back into running and so like what happened and like last year?
Yes, so I'm going to try and keep this short. Basically, in December 2022, I had some sort of flu-y thing. It wasn't COVID, but it was something that wasn't very nice, but it wasn't too bad. And then I was training at the time up for an 100-kilometer ultramarathon across the Lake District, called the Lakes Traverse. And I wasn't really progressing in my training. And so I figured I just had to train harder. And as I got further and further through the training program, it became apparent that not only was I not improving very much, but I was also really exhausted. So I was spending quite a lot of time in bed. I was getting back from my runs, having to lie on the sofa, not even making it up the stairs, really struggling with sort of normal day-to-day activities like cooking, having a shower, even, cleaning the house, really, really simple things that previously as an ultramarathon runner, I hadn't even considered as exercise. I was suddenly being like, wow, I do not have energy to be cleaning the house right now. And just basically spending a lot of time on the sofa. I was kind of still completing my training sessions, but I wasn't improving and I was so exhausted. I thought it might be overtraining syndrome, but I wasn't training that hard, especially compared to previous races that I'd done. And also for the distance that I was doing, it really was nothing. You know, it's as though I was training for a 50K, not an 100K. I thought I maybe wasn't eating enough, but I was eating nearly 3,500 calories a day. So I can't really fit that much more into quite a small body. So I basically went to the doctor again and again. And when I started getting heart palpitations, I figured that actually something was really wrong. And it wasn't just that was what training for an ultramarathon is like. But the doctors basically said, there's nothing wrong with you. Your heart's fine. I had an ECG, an echocardiogram, loads of different blood tests, a lot of different things, basically. And they just said, there's no problem. You're all good. You're nice and healthy. Your heart's probably just beating harder than usual because you're training harder than usual, which...
Did it scare you?
Yeah, initially I was kind of just like, this is just really annoying. But when I started getting heart palpitations out on my runs and even just like lying on the sofa where I am now, I did think that I might just drop dead at some point. And I don't say that lightheartedly. It was quite disturbing, having gone from a really like type A, very active, very positive person to someone who could barely get off the sofa. And I was desperately trying to complete my training program without overdoing it. But those two things seemed sort of diametrically opposed. So yeah, it was really scary. And it was especially frustrating to be told by the doctors that there was nothing wrong with me. Anyway, I went through that race season, did a couple of races. None of them, you know, went as well as they could have done. I DNF'd the 100K at 60K and did 2 other races sort of relatively back to back within the next 4 weeks. All of which made me feel quite ill, which I've never got from races before, other than obviously like really intense training and like acutely feeling sick. This was very different. This felt like there was something wrong with me, like internally. So again, I went back to the doctor and I basically continued this for the entire year until someone suggested, actually my previous coach early on in that year, last year, suggested that maybe I had something called Epstein-Barr virus that she had had in the past, something called EBV. And so I asked the doctors eventually in August to test me for that. And then at the end of August, I had OCC, which is a 55-kilometer mountain race as part of UTMB week. And I did that race, even though I knew that it probably wouldn't go very well. I probably wouldn't finish it. I didn't really have high hopes for it, but I was like, look, I'm here now. I've paid for everything. I might as well give it a go. And then a couple of days after coming back from that race, I got the call through saying that I tested positive for EBV and that was likely what was causing all of my symptoms, which in a way was good and in another way was bad. Good because it was really nice to have a diagnosis, you know, not be told we still don't know what's wrong with you, and me feeling inside that there was definitely something wrong with me, and you know, being told day to day that there was nothing wrong. So it's nice to have some validation, but equally EBV is such a poorly understood illness. It comes under the category of chronic fatigue, ME. You know, it has the same symptoms of Lyme disease, long COVID, all of those sorts of things. So everything from extreme fatigue, which is the most common, to heart palpitations, to brain fog, and that has impacted my work considerably, and various other, you know, things. Everyone is completely different. So in a way it was good, in a way it was like, this isn't ideal because I actually don't know what to do about this situation. But at that point I just stopped all of my running. I stopped basically kind of doing anything except for really light exercise, and for 4 weeks I got worse and worse and worse, probably because I just absolutely rinsed myself on the mountains in the Alps. But then eventually I did start to see some improvements, and I am very lucky that 17 months since I got this, I am able to run, because a lot of people with EBV can't run at all, can't really exercise at all, and it can cause major relapses of symptoms. But having said that, it's the same illness that Mark Cavendish had, and he did 2 Tour de France with EBV. So, you know, it's a real...
I watched the documentary after you'd mentioned it, and I found it really interesting.
Yeah, I feel like he didn't talk about it enough, but that's probably just because I never hear about anyone with the same illness as me, despite the fact that it's relatively common in young athletes. No one really talks about it. So to hear such a high profile person have this entire documentary about like his fall from grace and then his comeback from it. I was kind of like, no, talk to me about the specifics. Like, tell me about everything.
How was it treated?
It's not the
So it's
same.
just rest, is it?
The same phone call that I was diagnosed with EBV, I was discharged from my doctors saying, there's nothing we can do for you. Good luck. And that was, again, really disheartening because I don't know, like I come from a scientific background. I check through all of the scientific literature and there's some stuff out there, but there's no general consensus about how best to treat it. And for some people, it is like bed rest, which at some points in my recovery has been necessary. But for other people, something called graded exercise, so like gradually increasing the amount of exercise you do day to day or week to week, also really helps. But for other people, that can make things really bad again. So there are no, A, they don't understand what causes the long-term effects from EBV, and B, they don't know how to treat the long-term effects of EBV, and everyone is a little bit different. And that's why it's so frustrating, because even though it comes under the same umbrella as all of these different illnesses, the chances are they're actually each caused by slightly different things. And one thing with EBV is that 90% of the population has been exposed to the virus, but for the vast, vast, vast majority of people, they don't get any long-term impacts. So they will feel a little bit shoddy. They'll have maybe flu. It's the same virus that causes glandular fever. So they might even get glandular fever. And then a month down the line, they'll be absolutely fine. But it's 17 months and counting. And despite the fact that I probably outwardly appear quite awake, and today is actually a really good day, which is lovely. I do have days like a couple of days ago where even just, getting out of bed and walking downstairs is quite a struggle. So those days I just have to take it really easy, but I can't predict when they're going to be. And that is one of the more complicated parts of it.
How did you cope with, like, were you worried about like the whole like YouTube channel and social media? Because obviously that's your brand, I suppose. So
yes, I dug myself a hole by deciding to do a very intense sport as the thing that I speak about on social media, because for some reason I didn't think, oh, what if I get, majorly injured or become pregnant or whatever, and can't do this sport for however many months. And I've been injured before, but everyone gets injured, so that still makes for really interesting content. Even if I can't actually do the running, I can still talk about that process and the mindset. When it comes to EBV, no one has a single fucking clue what it is. It is not really relevant to the vast majority of people. And despite the fact that obviously I can make some content around coming back from time off or the mindset of having to take time off or whatever it is, it has been such a long time now. And like 4 weeks of that, 6 weeks of that might be interesting. A few months of that does get a bit dull, even for me, especially for me, in fact. Like I'm just doing the same old easy runs because I can't really get my heart rate up that much. And I think that's really dull. And it kind of sucks because I have so much information to share with people and I would love to be able to just get out there and do what I really love to do. And I just can't, and I've got to be sensible around it. And like, I'm not a very sensible person. Ultramarathoners aren't. We're all crazy. But I have to be sensible because at any point in my recovery, if I overdo it, I could go back to square one. And there's quite a lot of fear around that. More so even than in the past where I've had an injury where then I've redone the same injury and been like, oh crap, like back we go, all the way back to square one of recovery. Because it's months and months and maybe even years rather than, a few weeks here and there.
with the injury though, and you just doing easy runs, do you think it's a blessing because you're spending a lot of time on the trails now with your partner Fionn?
Yes, that is a very good way of looking at it.
So, and I know it looks like he's becoming quite a decent runner as well. So has he got any ambitious plans?
His ambitious plan was to make the most of me being on the sofa for a few months, get really fit, and then beat me at my own game. And it has been really, it's been really frustrating. No, it's lovely to see. And also, he used to refuse to run with me because I would run too fast or run too far or whatever it is. And now he's the one being like, come on, Flora, hurry up, like, let's go. But it does mean that we can all run as a family. We've got us two and then the dog as well, who we run with. And that's really lovely. And that's something that it wasn't very frequently happening before, like when I was very rigidly training for ultramarathons. So I agree. I think that's a very positive way of looking at it. I think you can get bored of doing the same thing.
He used to be a taxi, didn't he? So he'd drop you off and then meet you at the end of your run.
Yeah, well, he's a fossil hunter, which he's a paleontologist, so a crazy job. He would drive me down to the Jurassic Coast, go and fossil hunt for 3 hours. I'd go on my 3 hour run, and then he'd come and pick me up from wherever I ended up, basically, and drive us back home. It was great. It's perfect.
So has he got any plans to do any big races himself?
Well, when I didn't know what I was like, I knew that I was ill, but I didn't know what was wrong with me. In end of April, beginning of May last year, we did his first ultramarathon and also his first marathon. In fact, his first run ever over 27K. We did last year. And that was really fun. And I think he really enjoyed it. So unfortunately, like with most men, he sort of thinks that he could just do it. And unfortunately for me, I also think that he could probably just do it without training. But hopefully at some point, yeah, we'll like train up for something together. I think that'd be really good. He's obviously a talented runner, but he much prefers just going to the gym. Like, he's a gym bro. I mean, he's not a gym bro, but he's basically a gym bro.
He does look a bit beefy up top.
Yeah, he's like a classic swimmer's body type. It's just like an inverted triangle.
Yeah, his shoulders look massive on the video, the latest video.
Yeah, they are. Not a good runner's body for sure, but he manages to make it look very easy.
So how do you fuel your runs? Did you go into sort of like ultramarathons not having a clue about fueling at all, and you just learned it along the way?
No. So I like I said, I come from a science background. I'm really into understanding a lot about the body and nutrition, and I also thought, like, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it right. Having said that, there's still loads of things that I've learned along the way, because you can know all the theory about something, but not until you actually try something do you realize like what's possible, because there might be a certain number of grams of carbs that you should be having per hour, but your body just can't handle it, or your body can't handle gels but it can handle flapjacks. So yeah, it's really about like trialing things out. But I used to have an eating disorder, and this was like ages ago, over 10 years ago. Back then, I learned a huge amount through obsession, basically, about nutrition and diet. And for then, it was basically about trying to make myself as small as possible. But I can use that information for a much more useful cause now, basically, which is fueling myself properly for the training that I do. And that's why when I was getting really tired last year, it was one of the first things that I looked at was my nutrition, because I'm plant-based. I have a plant-based diet, and it is quite easy to eat huge quantities of food but not actually be getting enough calories. But that wasn't a problem that I've had in a very long time. I do I eat quite a lot of food.
That's fueling.
Yeah,
gotta fuel.
Exactly.
So if you take away the YouTube, social media, the running, the fitness, who are you?
That's a good question. I'm basically, at my core, a positive person who really enjoys spending time outside. And running makes me more positive and gets me to spend more time outside. So it's kind of just a way of making
the two,
yeah, exactly. It's exactly what I want to be doing. And even before I enjoyed running as a sport, I still enjoyed what it gave me, which was like a way of exercising in the outdoors.
When was it when you realized that this sport and the channel is like propelled you to this like status where you can help others?
I'm still realizing it, I think. It kind of, social media is a really weird thing, because for all these years I've been doing it, aside from a few years where some of my stuff goes like semi-viral and I gain loads of followers, whatever, for the most part, it's a fairly static audience. And I will put things out into the internet and not necessarily receive that much feedback back. I'll get some, messages here and there, and I talk to people all the time on social media, but I'm not necessarily getting direct feedback about all the content that I'm putting out there. So it's sometimes difficult to see the impact that I have until I go and do the in-person races. And that is where I really realize like how much impact I've had on people, because, and people have told me this is not just me assuming. I arrive and people will say, I signed up to this race because of you, or I did my first ever ultra marathon because of you, or I signed up to my first 5K, or I just done Couch 5K because of you, or they're wearing literally the identical clothes to what I'm wearing, and they're using Lucho Dietos, which is a very niche brand, and it's my favorite like gel blocks, and I love to use them and I share them all the time, and they say, oh, I bought these because of you and I love them. And that sort of thing makes me really happy, because it shows that like I do have some sort of impact, positive impact on people's lives. And it wasn't what I set out to do when I set up my Instagram account. When I set it up all those years ago, Instagram was not really a thing. Like, people did not have big audiences. So it wasn't like I set out to have a brand and I would become that brand. So yeah, it's all been it's been a bit by accident, to be honest, but I'm very happy when people share that I have inspired them or positively impacted their life in some way. And it goes both ways. When I hear people doing those sorts of things, it makes me really happy and spurs me on to kind of continue to share content, because sometimes it can be a lonely pursuit. I don't have any work colleagues. I don't have a boss, which is lovely at times, and I also don't have anyone that I can blame things on. So it can be quite a lonely pursuit, and to get that sort of feedback from my audience, it's very validating.
Do you do much planning around your channel?
Huh. Yeah, it depends. So when I am training for a race, I kind of have a vague idea of like the things that I want to share, the topics I want to cover, the things that people ask me, I basically can put into videos so that it can help other people. Because if one person asks me a question, chances are that lots of other people are thinking the same thing and don't necessarily think that I'm going to reply to their DMs. And let me tell you, I do reply to all of my DMs, except for the creepy ones. I reply to all of them. So I definitely read all of them.
That was a question I had, was do you get many creepy DMs of sleazy men?
Not loads. I'm very lucky. I'm also very I'm trigger happy with the block button. So people who have tried it in the past, they're not finding their way onto my channel again. So I get there's a couple here and there, but like it's the internet, there are weird people out there.
Right.
I can't remember what the question I was answering before was.
Planning around your social media.
At the moment, no. And that's, I think, why I've struggled with it recently, is that obviously I'm not training for any races. I'm not, up until like last week, I didn't have any structure around my training. And although that is something in and of itself to speak about, because that is a state that many people find themselves in, there's only so many posts and videos and whatever that you can do on that. So in that case, no, I don't plan it. Although on YouTube, I'm like, I'll film one run a week and I'll share it on YouTube every week. Although having said that, I haven't filmed anything for this week or last week, but usually it's every week.
See, I do like the way you film it, because you capture sort of like where you are.
Yeah.
Because a lot of YouTubers, they just like focus on themselves running down a trail, where you just tend to capture like where you are and so like where you're running through. And I think that's why I've stuck with you, because I love seeing places where people run.
So that is on purpose, and that comes from my joy of experiencing the trails, and that's something that I want to share with other people. And I think I don't quite understand why anyone would want to watch me, but I appreciate that some people do. But I try to put a variety of stuff in there. And for me, what I would want to see is the places where people can run, because that's what makes me happy. I try to put in then some educational or interesting or amusing content as well on top of that. So it's a bit of a mix, which again is why I'm struggling a little bit at the moment, because I'm running pretty much the same trails. There's no point me driving an hour over to Wales to run 5K in the Brecon Beacons, for example. There's just no point. Whereas when I was running 3-hour runs over the weekend, then I could really share all the different places that I was running and travel to really cool places and stuff. But it's all just part of life.
You used to get over to Wales quite a lot, didn't you?
Yeah, it's great hill training. Like you can't really train for the Alps very easily in the UK. And Wales is the closest place where I can do that. So yeah, I think it's brilliant training. And I also think it's gorgeous.
You've done what, Beast of the Blacks twice?
Yeah, Beast of the Blacks twice. All the Limitless Trails event series are excellent. So every time I have to do like a fast half marathon or a hard effort over a weekend, I'll just go and do one of those because they have food at the end. It's a lovely crowd of people and a beautiful place. And also I get quite motivated by running with other people. So yeah, it's a nice way of kind of pretending to myself that I don't have to be out for 3 hours. It's like, oh, I'm just going for a jolly over the weekend and it just happens to be a race.
What's been your hardest race?
Physically, probably Try Run for Love 4, the one in Croatia, 4-day ultramarathon along the Velebit Trail. Technically, it was some of the most technical trails I've run, and we were running them for like, I mean, the shortest day was 6 hours and the longest day was over 11 hours. And I was in the front 20% of the people. So like those were long, long days. And I think that's what I struggled with that one. And they're back to back as well. You're doing 4 days of that. And the problem is the longer you're out on the trails, the less time you have at the end of the day to rest and eat. And as we know, eating is like the most important thing when it comes to ultramarathons. Like it really is. If you can't eat, it doesn't matter how good a runner you are, you literally will not be able to do it. And so on that one, I just ran out of fuel. And on the 4th day, I bonked and had to have a nap on the trail. And it was it was all very sketchy. Mentally, psychologically speaking, probably OCC last year, because I knew that I was ill and I was hyper aware of the fact that my heart was at like 200 BPM, like in the first 9 kilometers. And I wasn't even running fast. Like I was running very slowly. And I did not think I was going to finish it, but I was really desperate to give it my best shot. And I very much did. I gave it 100% effort. And in the back of my head was always like, please don't die. Please don't die, because the mountains are not a forgiving place and you have to take them seriously.
Didn't you break down at the finish for obvious reasons?
Yes.
It must have been such a relief and sense of achievement for you, feeling the way you did, to be able to do that.
Yeah, it was probably the proudest moment of my life, and still is probably the proudest moment of my life. It was something that I set out to do in the knowledge that it would be very, very, very difficult. So to achieve that was huge for me. And I definitely cried quite a lot at the end, like proper sobbing. It wasn't just like a single tear. It was like proper full on bent over double sobbing, which has never happened to me at the end of a race before. Like I've cried, but that's really just from kind of relief or tiredness or whatever. Like this was sheer exhaustion and relief and all those months of concern and worry and training all going into that one moment. And I actually really, there were several points towards the end of the race where I was like, oh my God, I could actually finish this. And there was 0% of me that thought I could finish that race. Like I really was just going aid station to aid station. The only reason I went beyond the last aid station was because I had planned to meet my friend at the last aid station at 44 kilometers in, I think. So with about 11 kilometers, but 11 very hilly mountainous kilometers to go. I planned to meet him at 44k and take the bus back in Chamonix, and that would be me. I'd be super proud to do over a marathon in the Alps. And he wasn't there, and I was livid. I was so angry. I was like, where the hell are you? Like, you're supposed to be meeting me here. And he said, I left, I've gone to the finish line. And I was like, what the fuck? And he was like, so you'll just have to run to the end then. And I was like, oh, you cheeky bugger. So I did.
How do you cope afterwards? Like, do you have a come down in terms of your mood, and do you struggle afterwards?
After races in general?
Yeah, especially the long ones. Like everyone goes into a bit of a depression state, don't they?
Yeah, it's a really common thing that people struggle after a race, because obviously not only does it deplete your body of all your energy reserves, but it's also been, you know, however many 12 weeks, 16 weeks of your life that's been dedicated to this one thing. And then when it's done, it kind of feels a little bit anticlimactic. And then also you get all the really feel good hormones and everything going on as you're exercising, and then at the end. And then the next day, not only do you not have all of those, but you also don't have any energy at all. And you're probably hugely calorie depleted, especially in the longer races. So everything is working towards making you feel like crap. Having said that, I do get a few days grace period actually where clearly I feel so good from running that I'm like on a runner's high for like 3 days, which is just the best feeling ever. It's one of the reasons I love racing so much. I don't get that from anything other than pushing myself to my absolute limits. So
is that the time when you book your next race then, in those 3 days?
I try not to. We have a don't book your race when you feel depressed, basically, after a race, because you're going to do something crazy and it's not going to be good. I tend to book my races in season. So I'll have like a race season in spring, and then I'll have a few weeks off, and then I'll have working up towards basically like an autumn race season. And I'll do a few races in each of those. So it'll be like a couple of tune-up races and then the A race of that season. But having said that, I don't know if that has been sustainable for me up to this point, especially when some of those races are really, really long or multi-day events. So it's kind of a work in progress, really.
Was it planned to do It's Why You Run last year? So I remember Lewis mentioning it, and then obviously you pulled out because of your illness.
Yeah, exactly. There were lots of things I planned to do last year that I couldn't do, including a 250-kilometer race up the high coast in Sweden, which I was really excited for. Really, really very excited. And had I not had EBV, I would have also been very fit for, because it was a few weeks after, I think it was about 5 weeks after OCC. So I would have recovered from that and then also been able to build up to this next big race. And I was just so excited for it. But having said that, because I didn't do that race, A, I started my recovery sooner, and B, I signed up to a swim run event very, very, very last minute that I did over the weekend, literally last weekend, a few days ago, which was up in Sweden, in the Swedish archipelago. And the reason I signed up for that, other than interest in like what the hell is a swim run event, it was partly like kind of catharsis of like wanting to go back to Sweden and show myself that I could do something. It was only 8 and 10 kilometers. It wasn't quite 250 kilometers, but it was enough for me at this time.
Are you any good at swimming? Because one of our guests we've had on, Becca Salmon, she's not a swimmer. Yeah, she got injured, so she took up swimming, and she posted a video about her asking all these questions about like swimming and stuff, and all these brands just approached her and chucked loads of swimming stuff at her. She kept on saying, "I'm not a swimmer." So do you think that will happen to you?
God, I hope not. I am very much not a swimmer, and I resent having to swim in a pool at any point. Having said that, like I said earlier, I really, really love beautiful places. And the great thing about swim run is that if you're very good at running, you can use the running as a way to recover from the swimming. And also you're basically in a beautiful place running and swimming between islands, which is something that I've always wanted to do, but I haven't had the confidence to do by myself. Like I've never in my life swum that distance. I did 1.7 kilometers of swimming overall, which like maybe if you're a swimmer doesn't sound like very much, but I swear to God, I have never done open water swimming before. I have bobbed in open water. I have snorkeled in open water, but this is very, very, very different to that. And it was a little bit like haphazard, a little bit panicky. But it's one of those things where it's kind of like, say yes, figure it out later. And then I don't think I ever figured it out, to be honest, but I got to the finish line and it was amazing.
Yeah. So have you got any plans like in the future of what you want to achieve? You must have a bucket list.
I mean, it's very hard for me to look to the future right now because my recovery has been decent, but I'm not recovered. And despite the fact that I can still run, it's kind of like, I'd say I'm about 60% of the way there. And you can't do an ultra marathon on 60% recovery. You just can't. You've got to be at your very best. And so I'm trying not to have any big dreams because it's really disappointing, as I found out last year, when you can't fulfill those. and that goes for the foreseeable future, basically. But I was, this is crazy, I haven't told anyone this. I was asked, this is so insane, I can't believe I'm saying it out loud. I was asked if I wanted to do the Marathon des Sables.
Oh my God.
Which I realise is not taking it easy, and it definitely won't be anytime soon. But having said that, I kind of do want to do it, mainly because, you know, they're offering me a place and it's a very expensive race to take part in. It's also kind of iconic. And I do think, and I have always said this, I do think there are lots of other beautiful races that are much less expensive, much less filled with people from the city, you know, trying to do one great thing in their life or whatever. It's I'm a bit cynical about the whole thing. However,
no, I agree. I look at it as a city slickers race.
Right, exactly. Thank you. I thought I was being rude. I mean, I was being rude, but also I'm glad you agree with me. But having said that, it is iconic. And I would love to be able to share the experience with people. And of course, if I did it, I would vlog the whole thing, which I doubt many people do, because you're trying to shave off. Like, people literally trim their toothbrushes to get down that amount of weight. So if I'm bringing a GoPro, like, I'm a complete idiot, but I would want to share all of that with my audience.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So do you think when you actually get back to running, though, you'll look at it differently and be more, because you were quick before and you podium quite a lot, didn't you? So would you look at the running going forward as more of an experience rather than competitive?
Yes and no. My problem is that I don't think I've reached my potential. So I find it very difficult to take things easy when I think there's more to be gained. But also, like I say, I've got to be sensible. And I do think that it's better for me to be able to run, even if I never can race again, which hopefully I will be able to. But even if I could never race again, it's better for me to be able to run and enjoy running than it is for me to ever podium, you know? Like, that's the important thing, is that I can get out there and get into nature. So it doesn't really matter if I never podium again. And my attitude towards it has changed. And like, while I'm recovering, I genuinely don't care about my times and paces. I really, really don't. And trail running is brilliant for that anyway, because like, who knows how long it's supposed to take to run 15.9 kilometers in the Brecon Beacons on mud. Like, no one knows what is a good time for that. So there's no comparisons of times or paces or whatever. But I am by my nature a competitive person, and that is one of the joys that I get out of training for something, is reaching my potential. And I just don't think we're there yet. And I think it's for the really, unfortunately, I think it's for the really long distances that I'm good, like 50K, 50 miles sort of thing. I seem to get better as we get further into a race. And I don't know why that is. I am definitely forever under training for big races that I do. And yet when it comes to that point, I seem to be able to dig really deep in a way that surprises even myself. So yeah, I just think there's so much more untapped potential out there, and I really want to give it my best shot.
You're going to come off this podcast and wanting to go out for a run, I think.
This is so annoying, because this is my rest day. And I do really want to go for a run, but I'm not allowed.
Back in start of the year, you spoke at Bigmoose.
I did.
Why Bigmoose? How did you feel getting in front of a lot of people? It was a lot of people there.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. I know, it made me feel a bit sick. I've never done public speaking before, really, other than presentations about biology and interviews about health and fitness, pretty much. I've never done a talk, and certainly not a 20-minute talk to however many people were there. I did that partly because I was lacking anything that really scared me. And my life is spent doing things that scare myself, because otherwise I get bored. And I also think you can live your life in your comfort zone, but like, what is the fun in that? And because I wasn't doing any of my running, I was like, I've got to find something else. Also because it was for a great cause. You know, the charity is an amazing charity. They do really important work. Mental health is really close to me. As someone who has suffered extensively in the past and in the recent past. So I thought it's kind of a combination of it's the right time and it's the right place to do it. So when Jeff asked me first, it was before my EBV diagnosis, and I said no. And he asked,
you said no to Jeff?
I know, it's really difficult.
You must be the only person.
It turns out I actually really struggled. I was like, I definitely don't want to do this, but I'm finding myself nearly saying yes. But I managed to hold my guns. I was like, I'm not doing that. I don't want to do it. And then he came to me when I had my EBV diagnosis, and I was like, I actually have more to say now, because this isn't just a story of someone who loves running. This is a story of someone who has struggled, who has had some success in running and who really, really loves it, and then has had all of that taken away overnight, literally not allowed to go running. And it's my job, it's my social circle, it's my life, it's my enjoyment, it's my mental health support, it's everything to me. And all of a sudden I couldn't do it anymore. And I was like, that's a more interesting story. And that is something that also I'm sure has happened to so many people in their life. So hopefully it'll be helpful and semi-relatable to people.
Your presentation was really good. All the information you had in it was really good.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
It was just a shame that I didn't get the chance to speak to you afterwards and tell you, because it was really good.
I had to run because I realized that the last train to Bristol had been cancelled. So if I didn't get the next one, I wasn't going to make it back home. So I had to run, unfortunately, because also that last talk looked incredible and I was so excited to listen to it, but next time.
Yeah, that was Nick, wasn't it?
It was Nick, yeah.
Yeah, bloody hell. What he's doing is crazy.
I know. I did my talk and I was like, how am I supposed to follow all these previous talks? They were incredible. And then Nick's one came on and I was like, bloody hell. I'm sandwiched between all these incredible people. I do not feel like I belong here at all.
Yeah. It was so inspiring the whole night. It just left you with a sense of wanting to do more, challenge yourself more.
100%. I'm not allowed to watch talks and documentaries like that while I'm ill, because I do sign up for really crazy things. I think, how hard can it be? And then I sign up and it's just a terrible, terrible idea. So I can't watch any of them now, but as I slowly get back, I'm going to start binging that kind of material.
Have you ever thought about doing like some sort of FKT or like your own personal challenge?
Yes.
And what would you do?
My thinking about it has only got to the point of thinking about it, not actually coming up with a particular plan. I don't think I can get an FKT unless it's something that no one else has done, because I'm not that fast. Having said that, I would really like to do some, set trail. I'd love the Southwest Coast Path. Obviously, that's a classic. It's a tough one to do, but it's beautiful, and I know quite a lot of it already. Also, the Jurassic Coast specifically, quite a lot shorter. Southwest Coast Path, like 650 miles. Jurassic Coast is just a section of that and is probably, in my opinion, the most beautiful section, also the most grueling section. And then there's also something called the Monarch's Way, which is the route that one of the kings took after being exiled, that goes down, it passes Bristol, very, very close to here, and I run on the route a lot. And then it passes right by my in-laws' house, which is where I spent the whole of lockdown, which is where I really fell in love with long distance running. And I would really love to be able to do the route from here to there and just basically run to their house. But it's quite a long way. It's not the most direct route. And apparently the route is not, as in the Monarch's Way itself, is not the most beautiful path. It is marked, it is labelled, but I'd have to recce it for sure. So who knows? Watch this space.
You've got a lot of time to plan it now, haven't you?
Yeah. Oh yeah, thanks. Yes, I do. There's so many things that I want to do though, but I agree. I think it's time that I planned my own kind of challenge rather than just signing up for races. I think I love races because it's a set route. You don't have to think at all, which when I'm running, my brain goes to mush. So that's just as well. they give you food on the way around, you can fill up your water, all of that kind of logistical stuff is taken care of for you. Whereas when you plan your own adventure, obviously you have to be dealing with all of that. You have to fundraise, especially if you've got crew and people looking after you. Unless you can pay it all out of pocket, which I don't think I could, you've got to fundraise. And also it helps to be doing it for a good cause. I think it's important to do these things for a good cause. So there's a lot more logistical stuff to think about when you do your own challenge. But I am thinking about it for sure.
Good. Yeah, go for it. I did.
Ideas. If anyone has any ideas, just hit me up.
Yeah, I did 12 ultras last year, and I got to the point where I want something for myself. So, well, next month now I'm doing 880 miles.
Christ alive! Where and why?
I'm doing the Welsh coast, the Bigmoose and cerebral Palsy Wales.
That's incredible. Congrats.
Yeah. Yeah,
I know you haven't done it yet, but congrats.
I know, but I just think that because 4 years ago when I found your channel, I was just getting into ultras. I found a documentary on Rhys Jenkins doing the Welsh Coastal Path. Now Rhys is a very good friend. And then last year was Alan Bateman, sorry, and now he's a very good friend, and they've all helped me sort of like put my dream together of achieving it.
Nice.
So I know I'm not the fittest, but I think mentally I'm tough enough to do it. So why not?
I think that's it. It really is about mental toughness. Obviously, you can prepare your body as well as you can, but you can be as fit as you like. And if as soon as you start hurting, you think, I don't want to do this anymore, you're never going to get around something like that. But if you have that mental aptitude, mental toughness to do it, you're going to get a lot further for sure.
Yeah, I think I'll finish it. I think I'll surprise a lot of people.
How long are you going each day? How many days are you doing?
I'll message you after because I can't say because there are other people doing it as well later in the year. So I don't want to sort of like put it down and they can adjust their plans to beat the time. So I'll message you after.
Okay.
But it's a lot.
Yeah. It's a long distance to go. Have you read Marathon Man?
No.
You'd love it. He ran, I believe, the coast of Ireland. Not to one up you, but
how far is that?
it's a long way.
Maybe that's next year.
No, I actually can't remember. I think he did 35 marathons in 35 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, give it a read or a listen or whatever. I'm listening to it at the moment. It's the first
I'll
running.
probably listen to it because obviously I'm gonna have a lot of time on the trails in next month.
I thoroughly recommend it. It's a great book. I am a voracious reader of running books on running. Basically, I listen to them as I go for my runs, and it kind of G's me up a little bit.
Awesome. Thanks, Flora, and congratulations on 50,000 subscribers.
Thank you. Here's to the next 50,000.
Yes, yeah. And that is it.
Great. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being on.
Hope you get well soon and get back on the long trails.
Thanks. Yeah, me too.
Bye.